Today I'm here to talk about depression. Why? Because I personally have suffered from depression and still do to this day. I think it's a very serious topic and it's not talked about enough. Many people suffer from it and end their lives over it, yet we still don't talk about it. It's a topic that makes many people uncomfortable, and one day I hope to change that. This is my story. Beginnings. I was always a very happy child until I turned 9. My father was diagnosed with cancer, and a little less than a month later, he lost the battle. I saw him go from a caring, loving dad that I knew to a man confined to a bed, unable to communicate. I woke up the morning of March 25th, 2007, with a sick feeling as I walked into the living room, where my mother was waiting for me. She sat down and tried to tell me what had happened, the best she could to a 9-year-old. My dad had died. I didn't cry. I couldn't. As soon as I heard the news, I thought of my sister. I thought I had to be strong, and that meant I couldn't cry. I left my mother to console my sister while I went to find her favorite movie, to try and cheer her up. I did, however, end up crying at the funeral, and I couldn't stop. I didn't want to. I kept crying until I couldn't cry anymore, but I never talked about his death. Not to my family, not to my mother, not even to myself. I couldn't accept his death. At least, I didn't think I could. I kept this feeling of loss, loneliness, and despair all to myself. When I was at my lowest point, I wanted everything to end. I started to hate everyone and everything. I wanted to know how they could all just go on with their lives like nothing had happened when mine was falling apart. I fell into this dark void where all I could do was look out and see the light everyone else got. I tried my best to be happy. Although no matter how hard I tried to hide it, I had changed, and people noticed. My friends understood and tried to be nice, but after months of me constantly being sad, they got tired of it and left me, leaving me to feel even more alone. My world was falling apart, and all I could do was curl up and wait for a big enough piece to fall and kill me. I became even more introverted. At home, I stayed in my room. I didn't want to go out with my family or the few friends I still had. I think my mother knew I was depressed, and she tried her best to help me, but it's hard to have that kind of conversation, especially when you don't know what to say. Plus, she was a single parent now, trying to take care of 2 other kids. I started to only see darkness in the world. I felt alone. I eventually started to have suicidal thoughts. I thought, well, if something really bad happens, I could just end it. I can make it all stop, make it go away. I pushed those thoughts away. I didn't want to think like that. And yet, those thoughts wouldn't go away. If I started to think like that, I would remind myself of my mother, my sisters. Then I couldn't think like that, because I couldn't put them through something like that. I wouldn't make them go through something like that. Faking a smile over time became easier. I tried to have a good time, but at the end of the day, I was sad. I'm not saying I didn't actually have fun sometimes. I did. I had the time of my life. I had a genuine smile. I had weeks, even months, where I wasn't depressed. Just so the depression would come back, and I'd be left to feel all alone again. At a point, I wanted to escape. But instead of hurting myself or anyone else, I escaped into music. I started listening to old bands I knew my father liked, and then I eventually started to get my own music taste. What I thought was my quick escape into music became something much bigger. Music became a medicine for me, a way to express what I felt. Music became my life. I started to listen to bands and songs that had meaning to me. Some of the major bands that affected me were Green Day and My Chemical Romance, and of course many, many more. These bands became an inspiration to me. I remember one time reading an interview for My Chemical Romance. Here was this band talking about how they suffered from depression, along with other things. But what really hit me was when they said, it's okay to be messed up, because there's 5 guys up here just as messed up as you. Then all of a sudden, I didn't feel so alone. March 25th, 2014. 7 years after my father's death, My Chemical Romance releases their final album called May Death Never Stop You. That was one of the biggest helps that came for me at a time when I felt all alone. The music I began listening to didn't necessarily save my life, but made me want to live it again. I now realize just how different being alive is from actually living life, and I wanted to live life again. I started in my own way trying to get help. It was hard. I thought that getting help meant I was weak, but it doesn't. Asking for help just means you're strong enough to want to get better. I started to write down everything that happened in my life. I started from the beginning, going to where I am now. The hardest part was when I got to the part where my father died. I had to relive his death, and this time I had to face it. I finally let myself grieve. I could finally accept his death, and I was able to start moving on with my life. I've had amazing experiences in my life. I traveled all over the world and plan to do some more. I've met some amazing people. I've seen some awesome concerts. I've watched my family grow with nieces and nephews. And all because I got help. I didn't give up on life, no matter how hard it got. Don't get me wrong, I still have my bad days, where I get depressed. I have self-doubt and can't stand life. Every day is different. Every day, I try to like myself and think positive. Today, I like to think I'm doing alright. So please, if you suffer from any sort of mental illness, I want you to know that you're not alone in this, no matter how alone you may feel. Know that as long as you try to live your life, to get help if you want it, to just be you, I will always support you. So don't give up. It gets better. I promise.